June 4, 1942, the trap is set. 3 carriers. 1 chance. They're coming out of the sun. 10:20 a.m., June 4, 1942. 5 minutes. 4 carriers. The empire begins to fall. The ocean burns. The war changes. Midway. 10:20 a.m., June 4, 1942. The Pacific looks calm, a flat sheet of silver, but the silence is a lie. Above that mirror, American dive bombers fall like knives, more than 70 SPD Dauntless tearing toward their marks from 20,000 feet. They are not glamorous. They are built to do one thing with terrible precision: dive, hold the sight, and drop 1,000 pounds of steel into the soft belly of a ship. A 1,000 pounds bomb is heavy enough to punch through a wooden or thin steel flight deck and detonate inside an enclosed hangar. That internal detonation is what turns a structural wound into a magazine-scale inferno. Beneath the plunging funnels of cloud, 4 carriers ride in neat order: Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, the swords of the Imperial Navy that struck at Pearl Harbor 6 months before. Now they are arranged like targets on a range. Inside each cockpit the light is surgical. The instruments judder. The dive brakes bite the air and hold the little planes steady while everything else wants to tear them apart. SPD dive brakes allow the plane to enter an extremely steep, controlled dive, sometimes near 60 to 70 degrees, so the bomb's trajectory is almost vertical, the most accurate strike a pilot can make against a ship's deck. Commander Wade McCluskey of Enterprise looks down past the canopy and keys his mic. VB6, VS6, hold your angle. Out of the sun. 1 pass only. Make it count. He knows fuel is a prayer and time is a ledger. There's no margin left to waste. On deck below, the noise of aircraft marshalling and rearming fills the air, crews rolling bombs and torpedoes into position, mechanics topping off tanks, fuel lines running through the belly of the ship like arteries. That is the real weak point. Carriers are full of volatile cargo, aviation gasoline, oxygenated vapors, and stacks of ready-to-use ordnance shoved as close to the flight deck as practical. You do not have to pierce heavy armor. To kill a carrier, you have to breach the right thin skin and detonate what's stored beneath. A bomb that penetrates the flight deck and detonates in the hangar or near fuel lines initiates secondary explosions. Those chain reactions are far more destructive than the bomb's initial blast. Earlier, even the torpedo threat had performed its part. American TBD Devastator squadrons pushed through layers of Zero fighters to force Japanese air cover down to sea level. The Devastators were slow and vulnerable, carrying the Mark 13 aerial torpedo. Many were cut to pieces. Mark 13s in early 1942 were temperamental. They could run too deep on impact, fail to explode, or break up on water entry if dropped improperly. On Midway, their torpedo attacks distracted and bled Japanese fighters, not because every torpedo scored, but because every torpedo forced defenders to descend and commit to close combat. That sacrifice opened a vertical lane of sky above the carriers, room for the SBDs to fall true. The first Dauntless cracks the angle and the 1,000-pounder screams free. The pilot sees the flight deck like a ruler of light. He keeps the sight on the bridge, counts down, and releases. The bomb slams through decking, punches into a hangar and sets off aviation gasoline, hydraulic lines, and munitions in sequence. Fire blooms, not a pretty fire, but a furnace fed by aviation fuel and stacked bombs. Kaga explodes into a pillar of flame. Men on nearby ships are thrown from their feet by the shockwave. The blast does a second job, too. It severs steam lines, disables pumps, and isolates fire parties from reaching a spreading inferno. 3 planes on Akagi come next. Lieutenant Richard Dick Best dives with that implacable focus of a trained gunner: sight, hold, release. His bomb finds the space between elevators and the hangar. Inside, dozens of fueled fighters and torpedoes are stored ready for launch. An armor-piercing style fuse with a slight delay, what many of these 1,000-pound bombs used, lets the bomb penetrate the deck structure before detonating, maximizing internal blast effect rather than wasting energy on the exterior. Soryu receives the same verdict from Yorktown's VB3. Multiple near-simultaneous internal detonations overwhelm damage control. On carriers, firefighting is a detailed choreography: sealed compartments, flood magazines, cut fuel lines. But when multiple points ignite and spread through interconnected piping and ventilation, the choreography becomes impossible. Secondary detonations turn sections of the ship into shrapnel. Bulkheads peel like tin cans. Below the column of smoke, the ocean is a field of wreckage and oil, black ribbons smeared across silver water. Radios crackle with screams, calls for pumps, last orders. Men on the water remember the smell of hot metal and burning fabric. The survivors remember the sudden light of a magazine going. Destroyers move in to finish the job. Some Japanese commanders accept the grim protocol of scuttling their own stricken flagships to deny the enemy a prize. And above all of it, over the silence that follows the firestorm, the real cost of technological detail becomes clear. The combination of simple physics, gravity, explosive force, engineering choices, flight deck design, fuel routing, and tactical timing, height, angle, coordinated attack, rewrote a campaign in a single morning. For 5 minutes the sky decided the war. 4 hours the ocean collected the price. The names Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu are no longer banners but coordinates in the deep. The carriers that had once given the Imperial Navy reach across the Pacific now sit on the ocean floor because a handful of machines met their marks and struck the ships where they were weakest. Silence returns, not peace, but the hush after the thunder, while the war recalculates itself around the costs paid on this flat, terrible sea. Spring 1942. The Japanese Empire seems unstoppable. In 6 months, Pearl Harbor, Singapore, the Philippines, Burma, the Dutch East Indies. Every ocean map bleeds red. But one man isn't looking at the map. He's reading the numbers. Admiral Chester Nimitz, commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, knows this simple truth: you can lose ships, but not intelligence. We can't outgun them, he says quietly. We'll outthink them. Beneath the streets of Honolulu, in a windowless bunker filled with the hum of fans and the rattle of teletypes, another war is being fought, the War of Codes. This is Station HYPO, the heart of America's cryptanalytic effort. In charge is Commander Joseph Rockefort, a mathematician turned codebreaker, a man who turned digits into weapons. His team works on Japan's main naval cipher, JN-25B, over 45,000 code groups, each replaced by random numbers. JN-25B was a double encryption system, first a codebook, then an additive numerical key. Each message had to be decoded twice, and the key changed weekly, a nightmare for anyone without pattern recognition and obsession. Day after day, they listened to the static, endless columns of meaningless numbers, until one line breaks the monotony. AF reports shortage of water. What is AF? There are dozens of bases: Wake, the Aleutians, Midway. Rockefort suspects Midway, but has no proof. So he crafts a trap. The Midway garrison transmits an unencrypted message. The desalination plant has failed. We're running out of fresh water. 2 days later, a Japanese encrypted transmission confirms it. AF reports a shortage of water. This was the moment of truth. AF was indeed Midway. For the first time, the US knew not just the target, but the timetable of Japan's next strike. Nimitz now sees the pattern. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto plans to lure the remnants of the US fleet into a decisive, annihilating battle. The operation, codenamed MI, will deploy 4 fleet carriers: Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, over 250 aircraft and the most experienced pilots in the world, the same men who burned Pearl Harbor. Their tools are legendary: A6M0s, the most agile fighters of their time, top speed over 330 miles per hour, 540 kilometers per hour, combat radius nearly 1,200 miles, D3A Vals, dive bombers capable of plunging at 60 degrees and hitting within meters, and B-5N Kates, torpedo bombers carrying the Type 91 torpedo. 450 millimeters in diameter, fast, shallow running, able to pierce a cruiser's hull. They believe the Americans are broken. They don't know they're walking into a trap. May 25th, Pearl Harbor. Inside the headquarters, Nimitz stands over a chart of the Pacific. Red lines trace Japan's advance. Intelligence decrypts confirm. Operation scheduled early June. Nimitz points to a blank patch of ocean northwest of Midway. Here, he says simply. We meet them here. Around the table are Fletcher, Spruance, McCluskey, the commanders of Yorktown, Enterprise, and Hornet. They know the odds. Japan will bring 4 carriers. The U.S. can field only 3, and one of them, Yorktown, is crippled from the Coral Sea. But American engineers work around the clock. In 72 hours, they patched the ship enough for combat. What should have taken 3 months in dock was done in 3 days. Steel plates welded underwater, bulkheads reinforced while the ship was still afloat. Far out on the atoll of Midway, preparations continue. It's a speck of coral in the middle of the ocean, 2 airstrips, a few hangars, and batteries of 5-inch coastal guns, 127 millimeters. The garrison numbers barely 1,000 Marines, airmen, and sailors. They have new SCR-270 radar sets, primitive but powerful, capable of detecting aircraft over 100 miles away. It was the same radar type that spotted Japanese planes before Pearl Harbor. A warning ignored then, but not this time. On the runways sit B-17 flying fortresses, range over 3,000 miles, armed with 13.50 caliber machine guns, PBY Catalinas, long-range flying boats able to patrol for 20 hours straight, and new TBF Avengers, torpedo bombers yet to be tested in combat. Every machine, every pilot matters. June 1st. At dawn, in Hashirajima Bay, Japan, Admiral Chuchi Nagumo hoists his flag aboard Akagi. The Kido Butai, the most powerful carrier strike force ever assembled, departs eastward. 4 carriers, 2 battleships, 3 cruisers, 12 destroyers, 6 submarines. The pride of the Imperial Navy sails toward what it believes will be another victory. But every mile takes it deeper into Nimitz's design. On deck, Japanese mechanics check torpedoes and bombs. Planes are packed wingtip to wingtip, fuel hoses snake across the deck. Japanese aviation fuel was high-octane but volatile, stored in unarmored tanks beneath the hangar decks. A single spark could turn a carrier into a floating inferno. June 3, 9:04 a.m. A U.S. PBY Catalina scout spots the Japanese invasion convoy, 500 miles west of Midway. The radio message is short. Enemy sighted, course southeast. That evening, Nimitz sends a single order. All forces to intercept. Engage at dawn. June 4th, 4:30 a.m. Midway's radar picks up the first wave of attackers, 108 Japanese aircraft, led by veteran Lieutenant Tomonaga. From 14,000 feet, 250 kilograms bombs rain down on the atoll. The island burns, but the radar still works. U.S. fighters scramble, obsolete F-2A Buffaloes and F-4F Wildcats, to intercept. The Buffalo was outdated, top speed barely 310 miles per hour, 80 slower than a Zero. The Wildcat was sturdier but less agile. Its only advantage, armor and 6.50 caliber Browning guns capable of shredding a Zero at 600 yards. They are outnumbered and outclassed, but they fight on. Their sacrifice forces Nagumo's hand. At 7:15, he receives a report. Target damaged, not destroyed. He orders a rearm. The aircraft originally loaded with torpedoes for ship attack are now being fitted with land bombs. Fuel hoses run, ordnance crates are opened. This was the fatal flaw. Japanese carriers broke the golden rule: never refuel and rearm at the same time. A single hit now could ignite the whole ship. Meanwhile, 150 miles away, American strike groups from Enterprise and Hornet are airborne. Commander Wade McCluskey receives a short radio from HQ. Enemy sighted. Course 320. Distance 150 miles. He glances at his compass, then keys his mic. We know where they are. And this time, we hit first. The sun climbs higher. The ocean glitters like glass. Below the clouds, 2 fleets move toward each other, one certain of victory, one ready for revenge. The trap is closed. And within hours, the Empire of Japan will begin to die. June 4, 1942, dawn. The sun crawls above a flawless horizon. The ocean glows gold, calm, deceitful. To the east, 3 American carriers, Enterprise, Hornet, Yorktown, launch their squadrons one after another. Engines roar, decks shudder, and the air fills with the smell of gasoline and salt. From Hornet, Enterprise, and Yorktown rise 41 torpedo bombers, TBD devastators, relics of another era, slow, brave, doomed. Each TBD carries a single Mark 13 aerial torpedo, weighing nearly 2,000 pounds. The Mark 13 is a temperamental weapon, its depth control unreliable, its detonator prone to failure. Drop too fast or too high, it will skip, break apart, or run too deep. Its safe launch envelope, under 115 knots, below 150 feet, suicidal in combat. The pilots know the odds. Their planes crawl at 100 knots, barely faster than a zero's stall speed. Their only defense, courage and a straight line. 7:55 a.m. The first wave, Hornet's Torpedo Squadron 8, VT-8, led by Lieutenant Commander John Waldron, breaks from the clouds. They've lost contact with the dive bombers. Navigation errors have scattered the group. But Waldron presses on. "We'll find them," he tells his men. "Even if we have to search until sunset." At 8:20, they spot the Japanese fleet, 4 carriers in perfect formation, destroyers in a steel ring around them, a living fortress. Waldron drops to wave height, barely 50 feet above the water. The Zeros come in from the sun, 20 of them. Their Type 99 20mm cannons and 7.7mm machine guns tear through the air. The A6M0 was designed for supremacy, ultralight, no armor, no self-sealing fuel tanks. That made it deadly in a dogfight, fragile under fire, and perfect for intercepting slow bombers. Its roll rate and climb were unmatched. The first Devastator explodes midair. Another schemes the waves, flaming, before cartwheeling into the sea. Waldron presses forward. His gunner screams, firing until the Browning jams. A tracer rips through the cockpit. Waldron's plane cartwheels into the surf, a plume of white and orange. All 15 Devastators of VT-8 are shot down. One man survives, Ensign George Gay. Floating alone in the wreckage, he watches the battle unfold. 8:45. Enterprise's VT-6, led by Lieutenant Eugene Lindsay, finds the enemy next. They attack head-on, just as the Zeros refuel and rearm. The Japanese reaction is instant. Fighters swarm. Lindsay's voice crackles over the radio. "Going in." One after another, the Devastators drop their torpedoes. Most run too deep or fail to explode. Smoke trails crisscross the sky. At this moment, the Japanese carriers are fully alert. Every anti-aircraft gun, from 25mm Type 96 cannons to 5-inch dual-purpose mounts, is firing. These guns create a shell curtain, flak bursts at 6,000 feet, black puffs marking the air like bruises. Within minutes, Lindsay's entire squadron is gone. Only 4 men survive. 9:10. Yorktown's VT-3, led by Lieutenant Commander Lance Massey, arrives next. They come low, through smoke and chaos. The Zeros dive from 15,000 feet, firing incendiary rounds. The ocean boils with shrapnel. Massey's plane takes 3 hits. Fuel sprays across the canopy. He stays level, drops his torpedo, it misses, and seconds later, his plane disintegrates. In less than an hour, 37 out of 41 torpedo bombers are destroyed. Statistically, a casualty rate over 90%, one of the highest in naval aviation history. But tactically, their sacrifice accomplishes the impossible. It drags every Japanese fighter down to sea level, empties their fuel, and forces the carriers into evasive maneuvers, scattering their formation. Above the chaos, the sky is empty, for the moment. The Japanese carriers turn, zigzag, their decks cluttered with fueled planes and live ordnance. On Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu, mechanics are rearming bombers for a second strike on Midway. Torpedoes lie on dollies, fuel lines still connected. The hangars are packed, the air thick with gasoline vapor. On a carrier, safety depends on isolation, each deck sealed, each fuel line closed. Now, in their haste, every barrier is open. It's the most vulnerable a carrier can be. Nagumo stands on Akaji's bridge, the sea below him flashing with wreckage and fire. Reports flood in. Enemy torpedo planes destroyed, no hits. He feels triumphant, and then uneasy. Where are their dive bombers? He asks. 9:55 a.m. Over the northern horizon, 20,000 feet above the clouds, the answer is coming. Commander Wade McCluskey, leading the Enterprise's dive bombers, scans the ocean below. He's nearly out of fuel. The carrier fleet wasn't where it was supposed to be. Then he spots a thin, silver line cutting through the water, a Japanese destroyer at flank speed. He turns his formation toward it. Follow the trail, he says. The destroyer's wake points straight to destiny. Below, the Japanese air patrols are still chasing shadows near sea level. The sky above the carriers is clear, no fighters left to guard the heart of the fleet. 10 a.m. McCluskey climbs, levels his wings, and looks down through his sight. Beneath him, 3 carriers, open, exposed, engines running, decks glimmering with fuel and bombs. He breathes once and calls into the mic. VB6, VS6, attack! Out of the sun. 1 pass only. The Dauntless roll inverted and drop into their dives, 70 degrees straight down, their perforated air brakes howling like banshees. The SBD's dive brakes, slotted panels on each wing, let it maintain a nearly vertical descent without exceeding 250 knots, giving pilots time to aim with frightening accuracy. At 1,500 feet, the bomb release delay fuse ensures detonation below the flight deck. The sky becomes a storm of shrieking metal and light. Below, Japanese crews look up and see death falling from the sun. 10:20 a.m., June 4, 1942. The sky breaks open. From 20,000 feet, 72 SBD Dauntless dive bombers, from Enterprise and Yorktown, drop through the clouds like a rain of knives. The sun glints off canopies, bomb doors yawn open. Every pilot knows this dive could be his last, but there's no turning back. Below them, the Japanese carrier force, Akaji, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, lies exposed, decks crowded with fueled planes and live ordnance. It's a perfect target, and a perfect storm. Commander Wade McCluskey leads Enterprise's group in. Hold your line. Out of the sun. 1 pass only. The Dauntless roll inverted and plunge. The SBD Dauntless, Scout Bomber Douglas, could dive at angles up to 70 degrees, its slotted dive brakes keeping it stable. At 240 knots, the plane's airframe screamed. The altimeter spun like a compass in a storm. But that control allowed precision within 30 meters of the aim point. 10:21. Kaga fills the pilot's sight, the deck a maze of planes being refueled, torpedoes glinting under sunlight. Lieutenant Richard Halsey Best, the calm eye of the storm, centers his reticle, counts 3 seconds, and presses the release. The 1,000-pound bomb tears free. It falls for 7 heartbeats. Then impact. The bomb punches through the wooden flight deck, detonates in the hangar below. A 1,000 pounds general-purpose bomb with a 0.1 second delay fuse, enough to pierce 2 decks before exploding, unleashes over 500 pounds of TNT equivalent. Inside a hangar packed with avgas, hydraulic fluid, and munitions, that blast multiplies instantly. Flames erupt across Kaga's deck, a rolling, orange wall that feeds on fuel lines and munitions. 1 bomb becomes 10 explosions as secondary fires ignite. The carrier's entire midsection turns into a single furnace. Pilots still strapped in their cockpits are vaporized before they can launch. 10:22. Akaji, the flagship, takes her turn. 3 Dauntless swoop through the rising smoke. Dick Best dives again. His second bomb strikes the spot between the forward elevator and the island's superstructure. It pierces straight into the hangar. Seconds later, the ship erupts in a geyser of fire and debris. The Akaji's hangar deck was not armored. Its aviation fuel piping ran just beneath the flight deck. Once ruptured, vaporized fuel formed an explosive mist. Any spark, even from a broken light, could trigger detonation. Admiral Nagumo watches from the bridge as his ship's deck heaves upward. 1/3 of the carrier disappears in a single blast. 10:23. Soryu reels under attack from Yorktown's VB-3 squadron. Commander Max Leslie leads 18 Dauntless through the smoke. 2 direct hits, 1 near miss. 1 bomb detonates amidships, another in the aft hangar, where armed torpedo bombers wait for launch. The explosions chain through decks, engines, fuel lines, ordnance. Firefighters fight in vain. Within 10 minutes, the ship becomes a single black silhouette against the sky. For the Japanese fleet, it happens too fast to comprehend. In less than 5 minutes, 3 carriers, the pride of the Imperial Navy, the same that struck Pearl Harbor, are burning, dying, finished. In tactical terms, this was the most concentrated successful dive-bombing attack in naval history. 3 major fleet carriers destroyed by fewer than 30 direct hits. 10:24. Survivors leap from flaming decks. The sea around Kaga and Akagi boils with oil and wreckage. Destroyers race to rescue men, others fire torpedoes into their own ships to scuttle them, to prevent explosions from reaching the magazines. Black smoke climbs 5 miles into the air, visible from Midway itself. Only 1 carrier remains operational, Hiryu. Her captain, Taman Yamaguchi, watches the inferno from the north. His face is calm, samurai stillness in a sky of death. "We will strike back," he says. "Prepare the attack." 11 a.m. Hiryu launches her counter-strike, 18 dive bombers escorted by 0 fighters. They find Yorktown around noon. The attack is precise, merciless. 2 bombs hit amidships. The ship shudders, burning, but damage control teams fight back. U.S. carriers had self-sealing fuel lines, armored flight decks, and compartmentalized damage systems, lessons learned after Pearl Harbor. That design buys time. By 1:30 p.m., Yorktown's fires are contained. But Yamaguchi's second strike, 10 torpedo bombers, arrives soon after. 2 torpedoes tear into her hull, flooding boiler rooms. The ship slows, lists dead in the water. The crew evacuates. By dusk, U.S. reconnaissance spots Hiryu. Enterprise and Hornet launch their final counterattack. 32 Dauntless dive bombers rise into the blood-red evening sky. 5:03 p.m. They find Hiryu alone, still launching planes. The carrier's deck glows amber in the low sun. Lieutenant Earl Gallagher dives first. His bomb hits just forward of the island. 2 more follow, 1 in the midship hangar, 1 near the aft elevator. The explosions tear through the ship's heart. When bombs strike a fueled hangar, the ship's ventilation ducts channel fire through every level. On carriers, the air systems act like lungs, and in fire, those lungs breathe flame. Within 15 minutes, Hiryu is a furnace. Admiral Yamaguchi refuses to abandon ship. He bows to his men, stands on the bridge, and orders scuttling charges. The last of the 4 dragons disappears beneath the Pacific that night. The silence afterward is unbearable. The sea, once covered in steel, burns with oil. Thousands of men, pilots, sailors, mechanics, are gone. The ocean is a graveyard of wreckage and drifting ash. In 5 minutes, the course of the Pacific War has changed. 4 Japanese carriers sunk. 248 aircraft lost. Over 3,000 sailors dead. The core of Japan's naval air power, destroyed in a single morning. The United States loses Yorktown, but the balance of the ocean has flipped. Strategically, Midway was not just a battle, it was a mathematical inversion. Japan lost 4 carriers it could never replace. The US gained a year of breathing space and the momentum to strike back at Guadalcanal and beyond. Admiral Nimitz receives the first decrypted confirmation that evening. 3 enemy carriers aflame, 4th heavily damaged. He stares at the message in silence, then says, "This is the turning point. The tide has turned." Above the Pacific, the smoke still lingers, black ribbons curling over silver water. In those 5 minutes, between the first dive and the last explosion, the empire that began with Pearl Harbor met its reckoning. Night falls, June 4, 1942. The ocean glows with fire. From horizon to horizon, oil burns, black smoke drifting low, orange light flickering over the waves. The wreckage of Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiria lies scattered like shattered cities. The sea, once a chessboard of fleets, has become a graveyard. The survivors float in darkness. Some cling to rafts, others drift alone, oil-slicked, blinded by salt. The air stinks of fuel, flesh, and burning rubber. Above them, Japanese destroyers move silently between the flames, searching for their own, and killing the dying when orders demand silence. Imperial Navy doctrine forbade large-scale rescue during ongoing operations. Risk of submarine attack was too high. Thousands of sailors were left adrift in the black water. 11:30 p.m. On Akagi, Captain Taijiro Aoki reports to Admiral Nagumo that the ship can no longer be saved. The fires reach the ammunition magazines. Temperatures inside the hull exceed 800 degrees Celsius. The ship's internal pressure buckles the steel decks. Nagumo bows, gives the last order. Abandon ship. Destroyer Nowaki moves alongside. Nagumo boards, silent. Akagi burns for hours, her bow rising like a tombstone. At 2 a.m., Japanese destroyers fire torpedoes into her side. The flagship that had led Pearl Harbor slides beneath the waves, stern first, swallowed by blackness. Sorya had already gone down hours earlier. At 7:13 p.m., internal detonations broke her spine. Her survivors were pulled from flaming debris, their faces blistered, eyes melted from heat. Captain Yanagimoto refused rescue, standing at attention on the bridge until the ship slipped under. Witnesses say his final words were, "Long live the Emperor." The ocean closed over him like ink. Kaga burns until dawn. Her hangars, filled with torpedoes, explode in slow, rhythmic bursts, each blast like a heartbeat of the dying fleet. Hiria fights longest. Her fires flare again at midnight. By morning, the carrier that had struck back at Yorktown is a drifting hulk, her decks collapsing inward. Captain Taman Yamaguchi, the man who refused to leave, stands on the bridge with his executive officer, Kaku. Both wear dress uniforms. Yamaguchi salutes his crew, then says simply, "Together into eternity." At 5 a.m., the destroyer Makigumo fires 2 torpedoes. Hiryu rolls, bows, and sinks, the last dragon dying with her admiral still aboard. June 5th dawn. The battle is over, but the dying continues. American pilots fly low reconnaissance, photographing the smoking ruins. On the ocean surface, thousands of Japanese sailors still drift. Some raise their hands in surrender, others wave flags, praying for rescue that will never come. U.S. destroyers, under strict orders and fearing submarine ambushes, cannot stop. The Pacific, that morning, becomes the largest unmarked cemetery in naval history. At Midway itself, the base still smolders. The airstrip is cratered, hangars shattered, but the American flag still flies above the command post. Marines pull the wounded from wreckage. Mechanics patch up surviving aircraft, PBY Catalinas, scarred and soot-covered. They reload cameras, record the horizon, proof that the enemy is gone. On the coral sand, burned fragments of Zero fighters lie twisted like blackened wings of angels. Yorktown, hit by bombs and torpedoes, drifts slowly, listing. Damage control parties fight for her life for nearly 24 hours. Pumps roar, hoses hiss. The ship rights herself, stubbornly alive. But fate hasn't finished. On June 6th, the Japanese submarine I-168 slips through the American screen. 2 torpedoes strike. The first misses. The second hits amidships. The Mark 14 torpedo's American counterpart was notoriously unreliable, but the Japanese Type 95, an oxygen-fueled derivative of the Type 93, Long Lance, ran fast, silent, and deadly. It struck with over 900 pounds of explosive power. Yorktown finally surrenders to gravity. Her flag still flies as she slides beneath the surface, the last American casualty of Midway. By June 7th, the ocean is silent again. The fires fade, the oil slick spreads thin, rainbow colors on steel gray water. The wind carries the smell of smoke toward Midway, the scent of victory and loss. At Pearl Harbor, dispatches begin arriving. Nimitz reads them one by one, his face expressionless. Enemy carriers Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, sunk. His staff breaks into cheers, some cry. Nimitz simply nods. This is not revenge, he says quietly. This is balance. In Tokyo, silence. The news reaches Yamamoto aboard his flagship Yamato at sea. He reads the report, folds it once, and places it on the table. The war has turned against us, he says to no one. It was inevitable. Across the Pacific, historians will later calculate the magnitude. Japan lost 4 fleet carriers, 1 heavy cruiser, and 248 aircraft. The United States lost 1 carrier, 1 destroyer, and 307 men. But numbers can't measure what truly changed: the balance of fear. For the first time since Pearl Harbor, Japan's expansion stopped. The Imperial Navy lost its most experienced pilots, its strategic momentum, and its aura of invincibility. America, by contrast, learned that knowledge, patience, and precision could defeat even the strongest fleet. At night, survivors from both sides remember the same things: the color of the water, the sound of burning oil, the silence after the bombs stopped. Ensign George Gay, the lone survivor of Torpedo Squadron 8, floats for 30 hours before rescue. He watches the Japanese fleet burn and sink, the man who saw the Empire die. Years later, when asked what he remembered most, he said, "The quiet. After it all ended, it was too quiet." Midway was not the end of the war, but it was the pivot. From that morning onward, Japan would fight defensively, its fleet fractured, its carriers gone, its best airmen dead. Within a year, the United States would take Guadalcanal, then the Marshalls, the Marianas, and the Philippines, step by step, back across the ocean. The Pacific, once a Japanese lake, became an American sea. And it began here, with 77 planes, 5 minutes, and the courage of men who refused to turn away. The technical truth remains the same: in modern warfare, precision outweighs mass, intelligence outweighs numbers, and 5 minutes can rewrite history. The fires die. The waves reclaim their stillness. And the silence over Midway is the sound of history changing forever. Midway was not the end of the war, but it was the pivot. From that morning onward, Japan would fight defensively, its fleet fractured, its carriers gone, its best airmen dead. Within a year, the United States would take Guadalcanal, then the Marshalls, the Marianas, and the Philippines, step by step, back across the ocean. The Pacific, once a Japanese lake, became an American sea. And it began here, with 77 planes, 5 minutes, and the courage of men who refused to turn away. The technical truth remains the same: in modern warfare, precision outweighs mass, intelligence outweighs numbers, and 5 minutes can rewrite history. The fires die. The waves reclaim their stillness. And the silence over Midway is the sound of history changing forever. 1943. At Guadalcanal, Marines dig into black volcanic soil. The carriers that survived Midway now prowl the Solomon Islands, launching strikes that grind Japan's air power into dust. The lessons of Midway become doctrine: attack from altitude, coordinate strikes, protect your dive bombers, and hit the enemy's decks before he hits yours. Admiral Chester Nimitz transforms those lessons into a strategy called island hopping, bypassing strongholds, cutting Japan's empire apart by sea. Every map of the Pacific begins to tilt westward. By 1944, Enterprise and Hornet's successors, Essex, Bunker Hill, Intrepid, fill the ocean. The skies are black with Hellcats, the decks roar with Avengers, and the waves move under the steel of America's industrial tide. Japan's remaining carriers, Shokaku, Zuikaku, Taiho, are hunted down one by one. In the Battle of the Philippine Sea, more than 300 Japanese planes are shot down in a single day, the infamous Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. The kill ratio at the Philippine Sea was 19-1 in favor of the U.S. Navy, a result of radar coordination, combat information centers, and disciplined fighter direction, all born from lessons learned at Midway. By 1945, Japan's once invincible fleet is gone. The remaining carriers, Junyo, Hasho, Shinano, sail without trained air groups, their decks empty. When Shinano, the largest carrier ever built, launches from Yokosuka, she sails with no aircraft and incomplete watertight compartments. 11 days later, the American submarine USS Archerfish torpedoes her. She sinks in 7 hours. The irony is brutal. Shinano was built from a converted battleship hull, meant to avenge Midway's losses. She never launched a single plane. Admiral Yamamoto, the man who planned Pearl Harbor and foresaw its doom, is long dead, shot down in 1943 by American P-38s in Operation Vengeance. His ashes rest in Tokyo, beside the reports of Midway he once read in silence. In America, factories thunder day and night. At Willow Run, the Ford plant produces one B-24 bomber every hour. At Grumman, teams of engineers, many barely out of college, design aircraft faster than Japan can test them. Ships slide down slipways in San Francisco, Bremerton, Norfolk. The sleeping giant that Yamamoto feared is now fully awake and moving. By 1944, U.S. shipyards launched more tonnage in a single year than Japan built during the entire war. Midway had not just saved the Pacific, it had bought the time America needed to unleash its full industrial might. Years later, the men who fought at Midway remember less the fire, and more the silence. Richard Best, who struck Kaga and Akagi, never flew again after lung damage from oxygen fumes. When asked if he felt like a hero, he answered, "No. I felt lucky." Ensign George Gay, who watched from the water, spent decades telling his story in schools and memorials. "I saw 4 suns burning on the ocean," he would say. "And when they went out, the world changed." On the other side, Japanese survivors spoke little. Many carried shame, others disbelief. One officer from Kaga later said, "It was not just ships that sank. It was the idea that we could not lose." Midway becomes a legend not because of luck, but because of logic. Intelligence, code breaking, and human judgment combined in perfect sequence. Commander Joseph Rockefeller's team, hidden in a basement at Pearl Harbor, cracked the JN-25 code by tricking Japan into confirming that AF meant Midway. They sent a false transmission. "Midway's short on water." Hours later, Japanese intercepts reported, "AF reports water shortage." That one phrase confirmed the target, and saved the fleet. Every torpedo that missed, every pilot who died, every line of code decrypted, all led to the same 5 minutes. When the Dauntless fell from the sun, they carried not only bombs, but the sum of strategy, mathematics, and sacrifice. Decades later, exploration teams locate the wrecks of the 4 Japanese carriers. Akagi rests upright, her bow intact, her flight deck collapsed inward. Kaga lies on her side, torn open where the fuel lines once ran. Hiria's steel still glows faintly with rust-red light from the deep. The ocean keeps its secrets, but the silence down there feels eternal. Midway becomes more than a victory, it becomes a warning. That even empires built on power and pride can fall in minutes. That war, at its heart, is still fought by men, fragile, finite, and afraid. And above the resting ships, the Pacific is calm again, smooth as glass, silver under the sun. But if you listen closely, you can almost hear it. The echo of dive brakes screaming through the clouds. The heartbeat of 77 planes. And the sound of history turning on the edge of a bomb release. If this episode sent chills down your spine, hit the like button. Tell us in the comments what struck you the most, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Because this is only the beginning of a long journey into the darkest pages of history.